Hey, everybody, welcome. It's Crappy Childhood Fairy live. It's always a little nerve wracking getting started. It's great to see you here. Thank you for being here. Did anybody see my Marlis picture? You have to be kind of like a certain age to know who this is. But this is a original artwork by Linda Barry, who wrote a comic called Ernie Pook's Comique, which is about crappy childhood kids, and I loved it. All right, here we go. So I'm going to be taking your questions today. I'll be taking them one at a time. And Robert is my moderator, and he's going to be pulling questions that people ask early in the call. I'm just going to say hi here. Hi. Here we go. And you can begin to pop your questions for me in there. And I'll take them as they come. And we're looking for questions. We're not going to talk about icky things like abuse directly. We're going to talk about healing. So if you would be kind to each other here in the chat. We don't talk about politics. We don't tell other people what they ought to do. If you have thoughts or books that you've loved that you think other people might be interested in, you can tell them, hey, I got something you might be interested in, but just don't try to make everybody read it. Likewise about spirituality, approaches to healing, all that stuff. Okay, so we are not going to be talking about sexual abuse today. We're not going to talk about physical abuse today. We're going to talk about healing. So just want to give you a heads up if you have a question about how to heal something. That's what we want to talk about. And I just encourage you, some of you might be new to the Crappy Childhood Fairy. And some of the main techniques that we teach here and principles are we teach the daily practice for getting fearful and resentful thoughts on paper. We teach, I teach to de-emphasize the terrible stories of the past. Don't talk about them so much. Chances are you've spent a lot of time talking about them, thinking about them, remembering them, being at the effect of them. So when you're here, let's talk about healing. Let's talk about strategies that are working for you. It can be really triggering for people to hear about other people's trauma. And there's a lot of places online where you can go if that's what you want to do, if you want to tell those stories. But I'm going to encourage you here to talk about what's working and talk about strategies or ask questions about what works. Okay, here we go. Oh, somebody said I was glowing. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so let's see. Have you got a question for me yet? Okay, Jonas asks, how can I learn to stop being needy? So usually what needy means, like everybody has needs. And if your emotional needs are not met by yourself, because remember now that you're an adult, you're the one who meets your emotional needs. And you might be in a relationship where somebody doesn't help you with that. And maybe that's not a good relationship, but you're responsible to meet your emotional needs. If you didn't get them met when you were a kid, when it was your parents' job to meet your emotional needs, you might be walking around kind of trying to get that energy from people who are not your parent. And it's perceived as needy because it's misplaced. It's emotional needs misplaced. And that's what happens. It's nobody's fault who has CPTSD. But if we want to start having good relationships with other people, and have integrity with them and boundaries, then it's time to meet our own emotional needs. So a lot of times what people call needy is people who have a lot of drama and they're coming to friends going, hey, I want to talk about my drama. And another thing is they cling. They don't want to do things on their own. They're like, hang out with me, hang out with me. Or they're very sensitive to how they're being perceived or how they think they're being perceived by the other person. And they're like, I don't feel like you're liking me right now, and I can't tolerate that. And people are like, oh, come on, give me a break, give me some space. Stop being so needy. So those are like 3 flavors of things that are perceived as needy. So yeah, the emotional needs met. There's definitely an energy that people can adopt that is like a child. And especially like this is written by a man and by the man's name, I believe. And there is a kind of a way sometimes, this isn't necessarily just men or just women, but I'll talk about men for a minute. I've certainly encountered men in my life who they didn't get their needs met as kids, and they're somehow got some validation that they should be focused on this and other people and about their needs, their needs, their needs. Now you notice somebody whose needs are met, they're not talking about their needs. They're enjoying their life, they're being of service to others, and so when we're really focused on trying to get something from other people, it's going to push them away. That's the trouble. So how do you meet your own emotional needs? You've got to have a life that you enjoy. You've got to do things that are fun, and you can start by doing them by yourself if you have to. That's what I did when I had sort of burned out all my friendships, and I was in my first year of recovery, like, that was one of the major shifts. I got the daily practice, I started doing it, and, I started realizing how much when I was in distress, I was like, "Everybody, I'm in distress. Talk about my problems. Talk about me. Focus on me." Now we're not focusing on me. I still feel bad. I'd be, like, mad at people that I was, like, feeling bad still. Well, it ruined all my friendships, and so I had this period of time, maybe about 18 months, and then it started to gradually shift back towards people. But I took my vacations alone. I took hikes alone. I went to restaurants and movies alone. I kinda just had to figure out how to take care of myself, and I didn't know that that was my nobody gave me that assignment, but I was in a healing process, and so I didn't just hide out at home when I had no friends. I was just doing things. And I had the experience, how much it changed me to start to learn to be okay by myself. When you know you can be okay by yourself, you're not so terrified that other people are gonna leave you. So it's a really good and positive and powerful thing to develop that freedom. And then what happens is you can hang out with somebody else and be contained. And I just think contain is a word. You need to have that energy that contains, so you're not just sort of like got a straw in them, like like, take care of me, focus on me, help me. And that's more like a child and a parent. So of course there's a time when friends help each other. But when you're asking for help from friends in the context of having shown up for them, having just been a companion, being able to focus outward, not always being so focused on your pain and your problems, then everything can shift. And I think that's one of the problems is most if you sought help for your trauma symptoms, you probably got sent to talk therapy, and some talk therapists know about all these ways of approaching trauma that don't involve going into the story. But there's this old school way of trying to help people with problems that's about talk about what's sad for you and get sympathy for it. And you cannot make your friends into therapists. It's a one-way relationship and it doesn't feel attractive to them and they don't get seen. They just don't get seen. And people don't like that. Like everybody kind of needs to be seen. So two equals who can hear each other and see each other and care. And then most of the focus being on things other than feelings and self and drama, but like, wow, look at those trees, or it's so interesting what's going on in El Salvador right now. I just went to El Salvador, and it is so interesting what's going on there. But when you're talking about, something outside of your feelings, now, it starts that's where the fun begins. Everything is not therapy. And you also can't parentify your friends. They're not there to comfort you or take care of you, and sometimes you're gonna get that, but that's usually if you build a friendship on that basis, the friendship goes sour, eventually it blows up in your face, and if you think about it, has that not been your experience? It's a great question, it happens a lot to see PTSD people as being perceived as needy. Okay, Julie says, "How do you self-promote and share good news without seeming narcissistic?" Well, it's interesting that you say that, self-promote and share good news. What if you just share good news? It's not self-promotion to share good news with people who care about you. Um, yeah, narcissism is actually, it's funny because this goes back to the other question, is always being focused on your own problems is also narcissism, being focused on your greatness to the exclusion of paying attention to other people or having a mutual relationship is narcissistic. And, you won't be perceived as narcissistic if you have things in good measure and you share good news. It's not narcissistic to share good news. Self-promotion, I mean, usually that refers to something that you might do in an advertising context. Like in my business, I have to do that sometimes, and I'm not really thrilled about it. But that's how it works. We send out an email to people and we go, "Hey, come to this new thing. By the way, Now that we've got this call started, speaking of self-promotion, we have a sale going on, right? Well, the sale starts Monday, but since we're doing this call today, we created a link so you could access the sale. We have a sale on the Healing Childhood PTSD course. That's the primary course in my bundle of courses, and it's $199. It's normally $269, so you save 70 bucks. And here's a little secret. If you wanna be a member, if you buy that course right now on sale, you can also upgrade to a full membership and end up with $100 off of membership. And membership gets you all the courses, gets you free access to all my webinars, free access to group coaching calls twice a month, and our Facebook group for members, which is where quite a lot of group support is. So it's nice to have a community of people to support you when you're healing. So Rob, if you could throw those links in there, that would be great. I see Jessica just saying hello from the Bay Area. So, yeah, so we have this sale on the Healing Childhood PTSD. And while you're at it, Rob, if you could put in the webinar link as well. I have a webinar coming up Valentine's Day on the attraction to unavailable people. Not that any of you do that. Not that I ever did it. Unavailable people. So the webinars have been really popular and having a there we go. Yeah, self-promoting, 70 bucks. I'm just looking for the links. I can't see them there, Rob. Hmm. Okay. Okay. All right. I guess my feed is like really way behind. I think there's a big lag. Okay. So here we go. So back to the question about self-promotion. It's such a brief, concise question. I don't really have context for you. But I'll tell you, here's a fact of my life. Like crappy childhood fairy is by far the biggest thing I've ever done. I walk down the street sometimes and I get recognized, I get asked for my autograph. But my friends, we barely ever even talk about it. Nobody cares what I do for a living. And that's the fact. You don't need to be all about your accomplishments all the time. And I think that especially when you have an accomplishment, I'm sort of sensitive to like some people are feeling like they're not where they want to be right now. And at first, when Crappy Childhood Fairy took off, like everybody who came over, I was like, "Have you seen my YouTube channel?" And I don't know, it alienates people. And so I just let people into my life as friends. We don't necessarily talk about work that much. And that's something I had to learn. I'm very identified with my work, but there's no way I can talk about it all the time without hogging all the oxygen. So I pull back. Okay. I'm gonna do that. Okay. So let's see. Dark Rose says, I'm new and I want to ask what's the best way to handle a broken relationship with a person you feel super attached to, but they no longer want to have a relationship with you. Oh, okay. Hmm. I don't think you're going to like this, Dark Rose, but you stop having contact with them. When it's over, you just stop. There's a huge thing in our culture that says you need to stay friends, and that's a lot of why breakups really are horrible for people with attachment wounds. There's a lot of pressure to like pretend you're just friends, and you're not just friends. You're somebody who's hopelessly in love with somebody who doesn't want you, and it's like a chronic hemorrhage of your emotional energy. It hurts. And yes, there's an attachment, but just because you're attached doesn't mean that the way you honor that attachment is to try to maintain an attachment with all that rejection going on. The fastest way to heal a broken heart is to say, okay, gee, that's so sad. And then, maybe in a year or 18 months, there would be an opportunity to talk. But honestly, I suggest to people, don't try to make contact with exes because they may be in a new relationship and your presence in their life could be disruptive to their new relationship. Call it karma, if you will, but going around hurting other people's relationships is just not good karma. So if you really want a great relationship and you want to become emotionally available, the first thing you do is stop being attached to your ex by cutting off contact. So first, there's no more talking. You don't make a big show of it. You don't go, "Don't talk to me," unless if there was abuse or something. I think some of the younger people, they use blocking in lieu of boundaries. A boundary just means I'm not going to contact you. And then blocking on social media, just you can unfriend them or whatever, not follow them anymore. It's a good idea. Don't be stalking their social media. That's just a way to keep your pain alive, keep tabs on them. And this is how they did it in the past. You had courtship for a while. No, this is not turning into the real thing. It's over. And then you're you nurse your broken heart and you become emotionally available again. That is the fastest way. If you have kids with somebody, then there's kind of a need to keep keep a relationship going, and that can be one of the hardest things of all. And that's where you see a lot of fighting and acrimony, and it's you know it's something that a lot of us have had to go through. I've had to go through it, and luckily my relationship with my kid's dad is really happy now after all these years. And we accomplish that because I do the daily practice, he does the daily practice. We have a really healthy way to like process resentment and be free of it and be able to get on with our lives. So when you have a kid together, there's an obligation to stay connected, and all the focus needs to now shift not to your relationship, but to your care of the child. And that's a transition that's hard to make, but needs to be made as quickly as possible without a lot of drama. So I think a lot of the pain of breakup comes from this cultural idea that we're all just going to be friends now, and then you're going to go have dinner with them and their new person, and pretend it's all cool. It's not cool. It's devastating. It's devastating for a reason. There was an attachment and it's broken. And so you heal that wound and you work on yourself. I have a dating course. You might want to check out dating and relationships for people with childhood PTSD. But that's the first thing you do. You get really clear what you want, and then things that you do not want. And from there, you start studying all the ways that things that you've gone off the rails before and chosen people who weren't right, unavailable, inappropriate. And then when you date very slowly, so you don't attach to people you don't know. And that way there's no way to never get your heart broken in life. It's gonna happen to almost everybody, but it you know, you it when you kinda go rushing into relationships, you get your heart broken again and again, and then you start to have, additional trauma piled onto your childhood trauma, and that's really hard. That is really hard. So you wanna stop doing that, and how you stop doing that, stop the X's. When you meet somebody new and when you've done the work so that you're actually, preparing yourself and now meeting people who are appropriate and good and healthy. Healthy people don't wanna date people who are entangled with their exes or who still have drama or who are still all messed up emotionally about it. They want people who are past all of that. That's what healthy people want. That's what you want in somebody else. So waste no time. It's over. And what we need, if you have an attachment wound, like a lot of us, you might not have a lot of good friends who are good to hang out with. I'm telling you, you need a happy life that has fun in it, and you will be much less prone to limerence, over attachment to people, ongoing heartbreak, depression. You need a fun, happy life, and you do that with friends. You do it alone and with friends. And one way you can have friends is like 12-step meetings. They're free. Um, and so people always go, I just don't know where to meet friends. And there's always 12-step meetings. And even if you live like in the remote mountains, you can, and if you have an internet connection, and I know you do because you're on this call, you can get on an online meeting and start making online friends. But face-to-face friends are what are so important. The thing that helped me like totally change my relationship pattern was a 12-step group that would meet on Saturdays, and then everybody would go out to dinner afterwards and play board games at the table. And it saved my life. It was always something I could do. I always knew I was safe. I never had to cling to some crappy relationship because I always knew I had people to hang out with on Saturday night. I can't say enough good things about that. If you're isolated and alone, it magnifies the importance of your relationship. And if you're a fan of mine, you probably, you weren't cared for properly as a kid. You're carrying all these unmet needs from when you were little. You meet somebody, you rush in, you latch on all that like, come on, I need to feel safe. I need to feel loved. I need my needs met. And I just suggest you take that out of your vocabulary where other people meet your needs. And focus a lot on meeting your own needs and then meeting somebody who is really harmonious with the way you do that. And then they love you, you love them, you're supportive of each other, but they're not taking care of you like a mom or a dad. Okay. All right. Let's see. So D Prospers asks, how can we catch limerence ahead of time? Well, limerence is something that tends to spring up in that sad, lonely, boring life that some of us get into. It has a lot less ability to get to get into you, get its hooks into you if you're having fun and you have friends and you're doing things you enjoy. You got joy in your life. But nonetheless, there's theories that limerence has a genetic component, and I sure notice that people who, as children, had to use their imagination to see love where there was no love are very prone to limerence. That's, when I get letters from people who have limerence, that's almost always part of the story. Their parents didn't show up for them and were not very loving. And often there's alcoholism. And they got very good at like imagining that there was love, and that carries into adulthood, and it's a whole process to break that way of thinking where you don't spackle over the holes. You realize when somebody doesn't call you back and leaves you waiting for days, it's not love, it's just not love. You don't go, well, they're busy, and anyway, I'm probably kind of bitchy, and you know that's crap fit, and that's where limerence can get its hooks in. So when somebody doesn't like you, what you get in limerence, and as it gets stronger, is you get people getting into all this imaginary stuff like, well, they told me not to call them. They called me a stalker, but actually they're my twin flame, and that's really normal. So we had all these past lives together, and now they're mad at me because I killed them once in the 1500s or something. And this is magical thinking. It's something that limerent people do to hold on to an obsession with somebody who doesn't want them. And if you want to be happy and you want to have love, I would just say, call yourself out on this and do not chase people who don't want you and who don't love you. Don't do it. Work on yourself and get ready for real love. And I have the dating course there. You can, if you become a member of Crappy Childhood Fair, you get all the courses. The dating course is very near and dear to my heart. If you take that course, I really walk you through the process of recognizing your magical thinking and the steps that you need to take to get really clear with yourself about what it takes for you to be happy. And what it takes for you to be happy is joy in your life. And what it takes for you to be happy in a relationship is somebody who is available to be with you. And they will let you know. You won't have to question whether they're into you because they'll tell you, they'll be with you. When it's your birthday, they'll be celebrating with you. That's how you know somebody's into you. So you got to break this habit from childhood where you're like, I know my mom forgot my birthday or didn't give me anything. That's okay, because I know I'm a special girl, and you don't want to carry that into your adult relationships, or you just end up where so many of us have, spending all of our emotional energy. I just want to remind you, like, your emotional energy, that creative power that you have to love someone, possibly to make babies with somebody, it's the most potent force in the universe. It's so precious. It's so grand. And you're just like taking it like a carton of milk and pouring it on the floor with imaginary romance. It's a shame. It holds you back. It affects every other aspect of your life, your health, your career. You miss out on so many things. So I just, I take a really strong position, like, don't do it. And so there's this word for people who are prone to limerence. There's this word that somebody made up that's a good word. It's called glimmer. Glimmer is that first weird feeling that you have when you meet somebody and you're like, I think I could go into limerence over this person. Your eyes sparkle. You're like, oh, they're so cool. They're like better than everybody I've ever met. They get me like nobody gets me. That's called glimmer. And if you're serious about not falling into your limerence again, when you get glimmer, cut that person out of your life. Just get out of there. Get out of there. There's so much at stake. You don't want to do this again. And you must really be careful not to harm other people in the process. If you're in a relationship, if they're in a relationship, this is really devastating. It's antisocial to pursue someone who is not available. So, I just take it seriously. There's a few books on limerence that I love. Where are they? Okay, Lucy Bain, The Limerent Mind. She also wrote, I love this one, 20 Disastrous Limerence Errors and Exactly How to Avoid Them. And then this one by Dr. L, Living with Limerence. These are all great books. And I encourage you to read them. Get yourself out of the shadows with this. It's very easy to get fuzzy thinking about limerence and be like, oh, it's just a harmless habit. I just like to imagine it'll suck the life out of you and it will keep you from having a real relationship. And I know that's what you want. So There's that. There's also a 12 there's a series of 12-step programs, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous being one that would be appropriate for limerence. And, find meetings that are very, very strong where people sponsor, where people are not dating each other in the program, and don't date people there. Trust me. Not a good idea. All right, that's a little help on that subject. Okay, Lee, am I the only one reluctant to try the daily practice? I don't know what to tell you. If you don't wanna try it, don't try it. I'm gonna go on from there. It's just like, I don't know. Why would anybody not wanna try it? I don't know why you'd even wanna watch my videos. The only reason I have what I have is I know how to get free. All right. Jen asks, any tips on how to deal with feeling one's feelings being hurt while being dysregulated? Feeling one's feelings being hurt while dysregulated. I found getting regulated, but my feelings still felt hurt. Oh, well, if you're okay. So dysregulation is a neurological state, and it can involve emotional dysregulation where you overreact to things. But even if you were a perfectly regulated, if your neurology, your brain, your emotions were always regulated, you'd still get your feelings hurt. You'd still have grief and loss. You'd still have anger. You have emotions. It's not like getting regulated isn't a way to like erase your emotions. It's a way to bring them into reality so that they're not infiltrated by a bunch of old stuff, where somebody just offends you this much and all of a sudden you just like blow up like it's this big. And it's who knows if it's some emotional flashback you're having or some old trigger that you have that you haven't yet healed. So what we do here, we use the daily practice and group support. We use that to start identifying those triggers that start sending us into like I got really dysregulated last week. My husband and I were in El Salvador, and we were in this traffic jam. It was really chaotic, and I started getting dysregulated, but it was pretty deep. It might have even been a panic attack. I was feeling nauseous. I was just feeling like, oh, I don't want to. I just want to turn around. I want to get into a small space. I was just kind of freaking out, and I realized after I had a chance to do my daily practice, I could see I was having an emotional flashback about some old stuff, about being in a car where things felt out of control and being afraid of getting stranded and stuff. It was just some old stuff. There's no need for me to talk about that stuff. I just need to get re-regulated so that I can come back to present time and I'm not invaded by these old memories. Like there's nothing more to say about stuff that happened when I was a kid. I know about it. I know about it. I remember it. So much of I think the mistake that people make is they just keep trying to, like, talk about the past to, expect it to make them feel better, and there is a use for talking about the past, telling your story to a person or 2 and having some insight, and especially to get some validation like, "Yeah, that was bad. That would mess up anybody." That's very helpful. But to actually get better, you have to start learning how to recognize and manage your triggers and neutralize them and be able to respond, more in your adult self to present time. That's where all your strength is. You can't change the past. You cannot change what other people did. You can't even make them apologize today. All your power is in about like being aware of your symptoms and coming back online. And then when you're more re-regulated, you can solve your life problems. You're still going to get your feelings hurt, but it's less likely that your hurt feelings are going to go way over the top into emotional dysregulation, where you've been kicked out of the human race. What that is, there's a word for that too, and it's abandonment melange. That's Pete Walker's word for it. If you have abandonment when you were a kid, then, sometimes when somebody turns their back on you or actually like breaks up with you, just anything can set off that abandonment melange. It's a very intense set of emotions. They're dysregulated emotions. They're over the top. And it's hard to get through, but I can tell you how to cut down the intensity of your abandonment reaction in half, like right now. And it's to give it that name and to remember when it's happening and go, oh, this terrible feeling, like everything is so terrible. This is abandonment melange. And you name it. By naming it, the power starts coming out of it. You might still be sad, but you don't feel like you've been kicked off the planet. You're still here. You still have choices. You're still you. And so a lot of how we do that is by learning to get re-regulated, and then using the daily practice to keep facing the feelings that come up, naming the fearful and resentful thoughts, releasing them and or asking for them to be removed, resting in meditation, let your brain recompose itself again and again, twice a day, and you start to have more neutrality to this old stuff that just used to set you off. Okay. All right, let's see. Uh, Mermaid says, bitterness. I know you did a video, but I have bad physical illness, no family or spouse. How to maintain healing outlook in those circumstances while working on healing. Yeah, I know. I've been there. I had some serious medical stuff for several years, and I was a single mom, and I didn't have help. And it was shocking how many people who were supposedly my friends and family were not helping me. I did get a little bit of help, but it was probably about 10% of what I needed. And because I didn't have help, I couldn't heal. I kept needing more surgery because I couldn't heal. I couldn't rest. And I was bitter and I was terrified and I was going through a lot. And here's how it began to change. I still went back. I returned to my daily practice and I started to deal with the fear and resentment. So I don't know what your bad physical illness is. Sometimes our health problems, whether it's illness or injury, sometimes they are exacerbated by the presence of trauma in our nervous system. And so it's always good to start relieving your nervous system of trauma. And so a lot of the tools we talk about here, daily practice, learning to stomp your feet, eating protein, not sugar, staying away from alcohol, moving your body. I know when you're sick, like other people's ideas about movement, they're like, just do yoga. It's like, I can't. I've got stitches all up and down, you know. But it's that body awareness and moving your body that begins to bring you back from a dysregulated, dissociated state. Here's the thing, and hardly anybody, your doctor may not know this, your therapist may not know this, but it's known, and it's known by legitimate people. You can read about it, like in The Body Keeps the Score. Where's my Body Keeps the Score? Oh, I don't know. It's here. Okay. Well, Bessel van der Kolk's book, fantastic book. And I learned first about it there, and it was just like, just like fireworks in the sky. I was like, that's it. That's it. So I had 14 major surgeries. The doctors didn't know why each one didn't take. And later, talking to a doctor who was super duper trauma aware, she said, "Oh, well, you were going through a great deal of stress. And when you're stressing, you might be somaticizing. Somaticizing doesn't mean you're making stuff up in your head. It means that your nervous system is not able to function fully. So in my case, it wasn't able to like send blood flow to damaged tissue. Normally, like when your nervous system is just humming along, if you cut yourself, platelets go, scabs will form, your cells they know what to do. When you have a lot of trauma, you will end up with like open wounds. You'll end up with scars that won't heal. You'll end up with, you'll note the things that you notice would be like, digestion, headaches, pain. And if you're familiar with the ACE study, ACE Adverse Childhood Experiences, it's been known now for a while that the more bad things that happened to you when you were a kid, the higher the correlation with so many physiological phenomena: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, reproductive disorders. Um, um, it, I can't find the word. Immune, what am I trying to say? I have Graves' disease, MS. And memory, your memory is impaired by it. Your memory, your ability to focus, depression, anxiety, ability to conceive and maintain a pregnancy, ability to regulate your metabolism, like all of it. Your whole body is governed by a nervous system that gets dysregulated from trauma. And there can be like long-lasting dysregulation, and there can be short term. It sort of dysregulates suddenly because you're in a traffic jam and you're freaking out about something. So a good thing too is just incorporate in your life, whether you're sick or healthy, whether you're in a great relationship or you're going through a terrible escape from a terrible relationship, is always to be helping your nervous system to just bring it into line. One thing, like when I had my worst I've probably had CPTSD all my life, but adult onset trauma is what would let it out. And I had a couple of episodes where really bad things happened. And at the time I would go to the doctor and they were like, "You seem fine. We did a CT scan of your brain. It's fine. It's not bleeding." But I couldn't focus. I couldn't read. I couldn't dial a phone. I was, like, jumpy all the time. I was crying spontaneously. I was ruining everything in my life. I was losing my job, losing my friends. They were like, "You're fine, you're fine." Then they said, "Go talk to a therapist." The therapist was like, "You just seem to be sad every time you come in. Why don't you take medication?" Well, thankfully, I went and I read up, "What can you do about this?" And the first thing you can do is start exercising hard. So whatever your level of ability physically is, to get your heart rate up, to move, and then drink a lot of water, drink less caffeine, not too much, eliminate alcohol, eliminate sugar. And if you screw any of this up, okay, okay, but I'm telling you the direction to go in. You're trying to keep your levels, insulin normal, adrenaline normal, and then be mindful about what you're watching on TV, what music you're listening to. Like, I end up watching all these shows that are like shoot 'em up, or they have rape scenes and things like that. And I have to be very mindful, like, am I up for this right now? And I've got after loving horror movies all my life, I just don't wanna see horror movies. It's just they're just really stressful. I'm like, "Oh, I'm totally tired of having stress, and I don't wanna have artificial stress." Just like, "Oh, no, don't open the door." I'm kinda not into it anymore. I enjoy my peace. I'm not knocking it or anything, like, we use this as entertainment for a reason. We use it, there like, psychologically, there's a function there to deal with it. But just be mindful, like, what's happening to your heart rate? Are you going into adrenaline and cortisol? Or, like, if your heart is broken, are you listening to sad songs that are just getting you in that space, like, "It's so true, nothing compares to you." I used to have this record by this artist who, she made this whole record that was like rage at a guy, and I would listen to it over and over again. And then I was like, "Okay, we're done. I don't wanna feel this way anymore." And, maybe it had a function. So you start being mindful, and then you pay attention to who you're hanging around, who you let in. So when I was going through my medical crisis and I had such a egregious lack of support, it's hard, they make you sign this like medical durable power of attorney, when you have surgery. And I just didn't even know who to put anymore. And finally I found it was like my 12-step sponsor. Finally, I got a sponsor again, and then I made that person my durable power of attorney. And it was my meditation teacher who would drive me home from my surgeries, and I didn't have much help. And so I remember asking for some help from a mentor and going, "I'm just so sad because my mom is dead, my dad is dead. My siblings are like one's not in my life, one is not speaking to me and won't help. My friends are gone. My husband has divorced me and hates me. How am I supposed to get better from this?" And my friend said, that's the thing. Most people would have a sibling, a parent, a close friend, or a partner to help them with this, or an adult child. That's kind of how everybody rolls. And when you don't have one of those things, one of your top priorities is to get one of those things. And that was one of the things that helped me get very real about my predicament, that going through this medical crisis with small kids as a single mom and not having anybody in my life was a real problem, and it was a problem that had come about because of some choices I had made. They were choices I didn't know I was making because I had trauma, but they were choices I made, and I needed to unmake them. I needed to change my choices. I needed to stop getting involved with men who were not really gonna go the distance and be a source of strength and joy in my life. I just kept ending up with men who were a source of drama and abandonment. And that was a big part of what was happening. And then, my family has alcoholism, so the relatives were sort of gone. And then I needed to stop, isolating from friendships and 12-step meetings and places where I normally would meet people. I was isolating because I was embarrassed. I had just made such a mess of things, and I'd done it again, and, I was embarrassed, and I hadn't maintained friendships. And when I did have friends, because I was in this sort of, like, my heart guarded place where I didn't really wanna be close, I was choosing people who were sort of superficial themselves. And so I remember somebody made me some nice soup when I came back from a heavy surgery, and they made me some nice soup, and it was in the kitchen, and then somebody else came over later, and I said, "Could you bring me some soup?" And they brought me some soup, and then they and everybody they brought with them ate all the soup and left all the dishes and split. And I was just left with no soup and dirty dishes. Those are the kind of people I was friends with. And I just knew, like, I knew I that came into focus, like, I need to learn to have the kind of friendships that are mutual and truly supportive. There's a lot of reasons I didn't have that. I had too much drama in my life. The people who were capable of that kind of relationship, they were kind of sick of me being needy. We're talking about needy, about, me just being like, "Come on, take care of me," but I wasn't really showing up for them. So it was when I returned. I had left the daily practice for 2 years when things got really bad. I was like, "I don't like how things are turning out. My husband left, there's been a recession. I don't like it." But I came back. I came back and started doing it and really got focused on my healing. And I became willing to go to any lengths. I was sick and tired of the results I was getting with trying to just sort of halfway do this thing called healing. I didn't even know how to do it. Like, everybody had kind of half answers and no real answers, but I got dedicated and I sought out mentors. I ended up with 5 mentors. 5 people are the ones who sort of guided me through this. They don't even know each other really. But I got very serious about asking for help from the most formidable, wise people I knew and being very honest with them about what the problem was, and then being diligent about you taking their suggestions. If you really want to heal, it's going to involve that. And so to the person who said, am I the only one who's resistant to doing the daily practice? Seriously, nobody has to do what I do. But if you don't do something, you're not going to heal. So do something, and get very, very willing to try things. I like the daily practice because it's trustworthy. There's no ideology or religion there. You get to kind of, I don't know, it gives you comfort right away. That's really important to me. I'm not down with stuff where it's like, do this thing that just like beats you up psychologically for years and then hope one day you'll start to feel better. I can't do that. I have CPTSD. I need to feel better now. And then I need my healing to build on itself in the course of my life, in the course of my work on this. So one of the things, and I learned this from people in 12-step programs too, that also, it really comes into play, is helping other people. So once you have a little healing of your own, it's really good to turn around and help others. So in our membership community, that is so much what's going on. We have a tier of mentors. They're people that we train, and they will be mentors to others. And we're helping just like more and more people learn the daily practice, adopt it, and then turn around and help others. So that we have these peer-led daily practice calls. I think it's every day, sometimes several times a day. They're done in different time zones by the people who are our members. If you're into membership, I would love to have you there. We have a sale coming up Monday. We're giving you a sneak preview. Everybody else will send an email if you're on our list for this sale for $70 off our primary course, my primary course, Healing Childhood PTSD. This is the basics, how to do it. It includes the daily practice. It's normally $269 US, and it's $70 off right now. And so if Robert could put that in the chat, I'll just remind you of that link. So that's just for people who are on this call. I'm really into honoring the people who come to the call and like are into it that much. Come if you like my videos, that's just the surface. Come in and do the course. And if you, once you begin that purchase, it'll show you what it is in the currency where you live, if that's what you need to know. And you can check that out before you purchase. And then it will offer you the opportunity to upgrade to membership. And your membership will it'll be 20% off to all total. So I think it's $200. Once you buy that course for $199, $200 more. You have all my courses. You have the community on Facebook. You have the free webinars. You have free access to my group coaching calls where I answer questions like this, but you're on Zoom with me. We're all on Zoom, and I can see you and we're talking to each other. So that's kind of nice. So you might want to try that. Okay. Something I wanted to tell you. Yeah, I wanted to tell everybody, if you didn't hear this at the beginning, I have a webinar coming up on Valentine's Day, February 14th, on the attraction to unavailable people. On those, I teach for about an hour, and then I take questions. We record them. If you register for that webinar, you'll receive a recording of it too. My webinars, I do them every month. They're $35 unless you're a member. They're free. So something to think about. One good reason to come in. Okay. Fiona says, how to know when to walk away permanently from a dysfunctional family system? When is enough enough? Oh, Fiona, I can't answer that. I think that I would just, for anybody who's thinking of walking away from their family, I would say there's no need to make anything a permanent decision. If you need some time away right now, take some time, set a little window for it. And, who knows, when you have more healing, you might have more neutrality and have more flexibility to visit family members who do matter to you, should you choose to. You don't have to make a big pronouncement, "I'm never gonna see you again. I'm never coming back." That, sometimes it's tempting to do that. It feels like it will relieve some anger, and, for a second it would, but the best thing you can do is to quietly step away and take your time and work on your healing, and then see what happens. Take it one day at a time. You can stay away longer, you can go back if you choose. And I have a course called Connection Boot Camp, and in that course, there's a whole segment on how to set, I call them ninja boundaries, and they're like super strong boundaries when you need to go into the den of vipers, family of origin situation, for reasons that we do that, right? Sometimes you want to go see the people, help them maybe, or just say hello, or spend a holiday with them. I teach you like a structured way that you do that, but it's everything, all your decisions from moment to moment about whether you hang out with them or not, or step back. It has to do with how well you're able to self-regulate. Because if you were a perfectly actualized person and you were just regulated all the time, right? And your family would act crazy. They'd start in on things. They, start criticizing you, but you wouldn't react to it very much because it would just be like, oh, a crazy person is ranting. But it wouldn't be this whole thing that like sets off all your pain, all your need to fight back. You could handle it better. But none of us ever reach that perfection. But we do kind of make progress along those lines, and you start to have more choices, and you just learn like to pick your battles. You don't need to fight about politics with your dad. You don't need to make everybody understand what you eat and don't eat. You just kind of slide in there and get what you need out of the situation and stop trying to make it into something it's not. Especially sometimes if your parents have never, or family of origin has never acknowledged what they did to hurt you, I'm just here to tell you, they probably never will. Most people can't. The nature of abuse and neglect is that there's something wrong, and that tends to keep that acknowledgement from happening. Occasionally, it does happen, but even if they apologize, even if they get it, even if they're so sorry, the injury of your childhood trauma is still there. So you gotta still work on yourself, and the older you get, the more healed you are from your trauma, the more you're just gonna be, like, capable of sending some love people's way and needing nothing back, and that the people who love you, maybe they're elsewhere. The people who give you that love that gives you comfort and fun and joy, it's not necessarily from there. Sometimes we show up, to be of service. This is a big dilemma, a parent who abused, now they have cancer, nobody to take care of them. What do you do? The answer is the same. You take it one day at a time according to what you're able to handle. If you get all dysregulated when you deal with your family, then you might hurt them further. You might hurt yourself further. And, contrary to popular belief, you should not hurt people even if they hurt you. You should take care of yourself and heal. And hurting them isn't going to bring you there. So, not on purpose. We can't always control who gets hurt. Okay, so let's see. Saskia guy says, I'm separating from my husband of 25 years who's an alcoholic. I'm in Al Anon and doing the daily practice. Great. I'm concerned I may hit periods of fear of abandonment. What's your advice? Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're going to get fear of abandonment. In separation, I mean, yeah, it's going to kick right up. So get ready. You have your meetings where people understand you, and you have the daily practice where I have fear. I'm going to get periods of abandonment. Fear, I can't handle being alone. Fear, if I'm alone, I'm going to freak out. I'm just, I don't know you. I have very little to go on, but you're probably a lot like me. And breakups, bring it on. And the daily practice is your friend. Your daily practice is your tool to face and at last be rid of this layers and layers of this old stuff. And so actually separating from a partner of 25 years is sad and is a huge adjustment, and old stuff is in there. So it's okay to grieve, and it's okay to feel alone, with it, that your feelings are okay. But you're trying to stay with what's true and real and practical, right? And practical. I assume you're splitting up because things have been really hard. So a good day is when you have room to feel like, it's so good not to be in a great big conflict right now. It's so good to just eat a healthy meal and take a walk and not be rushed by this jerk who always was breathing down my neck or whatever it was. It's so good not to live with fear right now, and who knows, maybe you're gonna meet somebody new someday. And so you can start to have positive thoughts about that when you have less fear. But all that fear, like a breakup is like 10 pages a day, baby. Like, go, go, start. This is your chance. When life gets hard and you've got a strong daily practice going on, then the hardships of your day are your opportunity to face a lot of old stuff that's in there and get free of it. It's hard. You don't really get free of it unless it presents itself to you as like, oh, I'm heartbroken. I'm in abandonment, Melange. I can't handle it. It's up there. Fear, I can't handle it. Fear, this is like what always happens. Fear, I always knew it. Fear, blah, blah, blah. Fear, I'll never find somebody. That starts going on paper. You ask for it to be removed, and it is removed. Or you get a little relief, just a little edge comes off of it, a little more peace, and you meditate, a little more peace. You do it again, at the end of the day, a little more peace, and new ideas come in and a new strength comes into you. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from within. It's personal, it's spiritual, how you understand where it comes from. But your well can fill up again because it's not stuffed with fear and resentment. And when your well is full, you have the opportunity to have joy and action and, curiosity, and things begin to get better. But it's a hard road, 25 years. That's going to, that it's just going to come in waves. There's a lot of grief to have there. All right. Angel kisses. What a cute handle. I'm in my 60s. Can I heal from childhood trauma? It seems to have come back to haunt me. Isn't it funny how it does that sometimes? Sometimes it comes back. And who knows why, but here it is, right? It's not too late to heal at all. And I have a video, I think it's buried way back in the archives, and I should maybe bring out these principles again. But sometimes I think being older is the best time to heal because you have so much less delusional idealism that if you just met the right person, none of this would be bothering you anymore. Or if you just had more money, by the time you're 60, you're like, I see certain problems travel with me in good times and bad. It must be me. That's good to know, right? That's like personal wisdom to understand yourself in that way. And there's also like there's less at stake. Like you can afford to really dive in and try to heal things because usually you don't have, little ones depending on you. Some people do as grandparents. And hopefully there's a little bit of like settledness with where you live and money, not always for everybody, but being older is a time of clarity and potential, and you can really like move forward very quickly with that maturity under your belt. I think it's hard. I'm always amazed when somebody in their 20s comes in and starts to make real headway in my programs. Like they do. People in their 20s do come in. Sometimes they're like, I want to bring my teenager in. And I'm like, you can. Like I taught my daily practice to my kids when they were little, and there's like levels you can do it at. But frankly, a person in their teenage years is they may not have the perspective yet about like what are they doing. I never say never, but I've noticed that right around 30 is often when a lot of people have that crisis where they're like, oh my gosh, this just keeps happening. That hope that the outside change is going to do it, it starts wearing thin. So by 60, you start to be very clear. There's a resonance there to what you understand about the world, but is also sometimes a bitterness, and that bitterness has got to go. It's got to go. And this is not just unique to being in your 60s, but a thing that can really get in the way of healing. And I was recording videos this morning you'll see in a couple weeks, but it was about comments I see all the time where people are saying, well, everybody today is just so selfish. And I'm just like, that's just not true. That's just not true. It may be who you're surrounding yourself with. It may be an experience you had recently. But to believe that I'm good and everybody else is just selfish, that's like the other N word. It's narcissistic to think that everybody is so terrible. And so I think healthy maturity is to recognize everybody's kind of a mix of good and bad. A lot of who we surround ourselves with has to do with what we have inside. So we cultivate our own virtue. We cultivate our own healed state, our ability to be less reactive and more self-supporting in that we support ourselves. we express ourselves, we're kind, considerate, patient, all of these virtues, like, this is what makes life good. A lot of people who have trauma have been kind of programmed by certain approaches to healing that all feelings are good to express, and you're always entitled for people to listen to you, and it's just not true. Nobody has to listen to you. Nobody has to help you, you know? And, so it depends on cooperation, and I think some approaches to healing actually make trauma worse and increase the disconnection we have from people by setting these unrealistic expectations. I've been tempted to get into these arguments with people in the comments sometimes. I have this video that's very popular called, "How to Control Intense Emotions Instantly," and it's about how to dial down your emotional dysregulation so that you don't, like, make a scene or freak out, and, like, exactly, like, practically how to do that, right? And there's always people who come on from time to time, and they're like, "This is self-suppression. This makes trauma worse." And I'm just like, "Oh, BS." And somebody recently complained and said, "Oh, you're saying I should suppress myself. I should express everything my therapist said." I'm like, "Oh god, good luck to everybody around you if you express everything. I can't tell you all the thoughts I have. You do not want to hear all my feelings and thoughts." We temper that. We temper that because we're social beings, and, we're not feral. We're not rabid raccoons. We can sometimes feel really angry at somebody, and then we contain it enough to listen or to remove ourselves from the situation, or feel that we're in danger and not just start killing everybody. So, and somebody says, "I have a right because people get violent with me." And I'm like, "Well, that's what I mean. People get violent. That happens in emotional dysregulation. Hello, that's where it comes from." That's where it comes from. And so we get this split sometimes in how we look at it. It's like there's the bad people and they're just out to get you, and I'm a good person and I'm entitled to express myself. But really what we're learning, we're getting through, we're overcoming the developmental delay that happened as a result of neglect and abuse in childhood, where you didn't learn how to, when somebody's not paying attention to you or they're fighting and screaming in front of you, you're not learning by modeling and support and help and just neurological co-regulation. You're not learning how to kind of handle life's intense moments and how to stay safe, how much to express yourself when it's not worth it, how to remove yourself, right? So that's some of the stuff that we lose, through trauma as kids. So it gets better. It gets better, but I'm always going to be redirecting you to focus on yourself. Focus on healing yourself. It's very difficult to change things about society. That's another thing. I did this video on excuses lately, but that's one of them. Like, how can I be expected to self-regulate when society is so unfair? It's like, oh yeah, society is unfair. And good luck changing that. And especially if you're a dysregulated person who's just like throwing tantrums, you're not going to make a positive change, I'm afraid. We are gradually, as a human race, we are gradually making progress and becoming kinder, more considerate. We have like 2 steps forward, 1.5 steps back and forth, back and forth. But there is goodness. There are more and more good things happening and more understanding possible, more safety available. And the best thing that we can do is rise up into our real selves with all of our strength and all of our gifts so that we can turn around and give a hand back to people who are still struggling. Give a hand back to people who are still in abusive situations, and be the calm person who invites the person who's alone this holiday, to hang out, to be the person who gives a little listen or drives them home from the hospital. I'm not advocating that you just, bypass all your own problems and just go help other people. You do both, but you need to do both. CPTSD is a social wound. It gets there because of this fundamental breakdown in your connection to other people. So as much as it might seem nice to just get away from people and society and do all your healing with books or animals or therapy, you have to be out in the world actually to start healing and practicing that new relationship to the social world. You cannot escape the social fabric. Doesn't that suck? That used to really depress me. I'm like, I just want out. I don't want to be in the social fabric. But of course we need to be in the social fabric. And to really fulfill, all that we're capable of course we need to be in the social fabric. There's a very tiny, tiny number of people whose real gifts show up in seclusion. And you're probably not one of them if you even watch YouTube. So there. So we practice that. That's a course you can take with me. Dating course, connection boot camp, dysregulation boot camp. That's a nice short course. and Healing Childhood PTSD. And Healing Childhood PTSD on sale. The sale starts Monday, but if you're on this call for today, we're giving you this link that you can get in there and buy it on sale right now before the public hears about it. And if you take that, if you choose to, you can upgrade to membership too. It's a good deal all around. If you don't have a penny, come take the daily practice course. It's free. And with that, you can come to my free daily practice calls. I do those twice a month, and they're wonderful. It's my great joy to do those calls. They often last well over 2 hours. We write together, we meditate together, and then I take questions, and people chat and make friends and find buddies. And it's a lovely place, and it's free, and it's always going to be free. There's always a place for you, money or no money. Okay. Here's a heads up for those of you who are interested. This week, I'll be sending out an announcement. I'm doing something really new in a few months, and it's a 4-day retreat. We're calling it the Weekend Intensive. It's with me. It starts on a Thursday early evening. It goes all the way to Sunday midday. We're up in a fancy resort here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's some expensive thing. It's the most expensive thing we have, but I will personally be there teaching my 8-week curriculum in a weekend. Some of you may have seen the 8-week coaching intensive. We just filled up our last seat for that for the February 4th group. We'll have another one March 5th. It's a 2-step process to apply. You send in an application and tell us about yourself. There's a short interview so that you can ask questions and we can just see, do we think the program meets your needs? That curriculum is taught online with Kara Alexander, who I work closely with. It's more affordable than this, 4-day in-person workshop. But I can't wait to launch this thing and to meet the people who are going to come to my weekend intensive. And then also, haven't announced yet, but we'll announce it this week. I've started booking my tour this year. I've got the first tour date set in June. New York City, June 3rd, all-day workshop. Berlin, June 11th, all-day workshop. Oslo, June 16th, half-day workshop. And London, all-day workshop, June 24th. So you'll be getting an email about that very soon. If you're not on my email list, if you don't get emails from me either because you never signed up for anything, or you just go download a free tool, get the daily practice, a quiz, you'll be on our list. We'll let you know about this. If you unsubscribe from the email list, you'll never know about this stuff. So come back, be on the list. You'll want to know about this. The live events are just so great. And I did a bunch last year and they're a blast. And then in the fall, I'll do more in the US, maybe Canada too. So we'll do some of those. Got so much going on right now. I'm really excited about it all. And thank you for coming to the live here on YouTube. Would love to see you in a course, a coaching call, a daily practice call, in the membership, at a live event, or in the weekend intensive, April 13th to 16th here in Berkeley, California. Okay. All right. With that, I wish you well. I love you. Keep healing, everybody. Ciao.